I come to you from the future to talk about news that happened between December 3rd, 2025 to December 10th, 2025. And there is definitely tons of news to talk about. And because there's just been so much news during this span, I'm going to do the news of the week between December 3rd and December 10th, 2025 into two parts. And tomorrow I will be doing part number 2 of this news of the week. But first thing that I have to talk about is something that I've been dying to talk about in the news of the week, and I think I've been making a lot of video talking about this, but I just want to mention it again in the news of the week because this was probably the greatest year in my life in terms of supporting the San Jose Earthquakes, mainly because I was able to see them for the first time as a fan of this team win an MLS Cup as they complete not just an underdog story by winning MLS Cup over Atlanta United, but something that is kind of out of a Hollywood script. Because you remember how this team was bottom of the Western Conference back in June, and how shockingly Chris Wondolowski decided to announce his return from the Quakes and unretire at the age of 43, and people were laughing, thinking that that's really doesn't do much for the Quakes. Well, not only the fact that he proved people wrong, but he was scoring at a rate that we have not seen him scoring since he won the Golden Boot back in 2012. And he single-handedly lifted this team from being at the bottom of the Western Conference to just making the playoffs and securing the 10th spot in the Western Conference to make it to the playoffs. And during the playoffs, the Quakes not only were able to come from behind every single game that they made in the playoffs, but they were also able to win every single game in terms of penalty kick shootout, and they won 4 penalty kick shootout in a row coming into this MLS Cup game, which is a record in MLS, and no other team has ever done that before. So it's just so willingly that in this final, when the Quakes were down 3-0 with about 15 minutes left, and it looked like Atlanta was going to win their 5th straight MLS Cup, Wando would score a hat trick in the last 15 minutes to tie the game up at 3 apiece, and pretty much did a Istanbul that the Quakes did to Atlanta United. And in the penalty kick shootout, where the Quakes were looking to win their 5th straight penalty kick shootout, not only they were able to win that, but guess who took the last kick and the winning penalty kick to win the Quakes their 3rd MLS Cup? Yep, you guessed it. It's Chris Wondolowski, and if he wasn't a legend of this team and probably one of the greatest player to ever play in MLS, I think what he has done and what the Quakes have done during this season pretty much just cement that. And that, yeah, I mean, this is going to be a story we're going to be talking about for a very long time. And certainly as a Quakes fan, I mean, I'm still kind of surreal of what I just witnessed there, because that is something that is just too good to be true. And yet it happened, and I won't be surprised if they're going to make a movie script out of this, because that would really be a great movie script in terms of what the Quakes done and what Wando has done to this team to lift them to go to win their 3rd ever MLS Cup. Now, there is a report that NYCFC is going to play in 6 different venues next season, which include the New York Derby at MetLife Stadium. So NYCFC, obviously, they're still having issue in terms of finding that new stadium down at the docks. So next year they decided that they're gonna just play at 6 different venues. They're gonna be playing at Yankee Stadium, which is where most of the games gonna be taking place. But they're also gonna be playing at Citi Field, MCU Park, which is the stadium that the Brooklyn Cyclones are playing. They were reported to play at the stadium where the Cosmos used to play. Not MCU Park, but the old one, which I forgot what was the name of that stadium, but unfortunately that was turned down because it did not meet FIFA standard and did not meet the MLS standard of the pitch side. And they are even going to play 1 midweek games at Red Bull Arena, and I'm not quite sure which opponent that they're going to be playing, but it's definitely not going to be the Red Bulls. I mean, can you imagine NYCFC versus the Red Bulls, and it's a home game for NYCFC to play in this New York derby, and the fact that the Red Bulls are actually playing at home, but MLS saying that NYCFC is the home team because this is their home game, it would just confuse the heck out of everybody. But that derby is going to be at MetLife Stadium, and as much as the New York derby is one of the best derby in MLS, I doubt they're going to fill up MetLife Stadium because the New York derby, unlike many of the great derbies around MLS, has always tends to have empty seats in their stadium, and if there's empty seats in the stadium at Yankee Stadium and Red Bull Arena, I doubt that they're going to fit the whole 85,000 people at MetLife Stadium. But we shall see. It's the first time the New York Derby is play at a stadium that is not the home ground of both of the teams, so we'll see how that's going to work out. Now, speaking of stadium issue, Inter Miami have also have some stadium issue as they're still waiting approval of that new stadium being constructed in Freedom Park, and this is pretty much for the second year in a row that they're still that they said that they're getting very close to finally building that stadium at Freedom Park, but for whatever reason the city of Miami say that they cannot build that stadium because there's still chemical kind of leaking in that ground. But we shall see. I mean, at this point maybe Beckham should just think about constructing his new stadium other than where the Freedom Park site is, or the fact that he should just fund his own stadium. And he has enough money to fund his own stadium, and you could, if he can't build it in Miami, maybe he can just build it in the UK and just call it Inter Miami, even though people will just think, how are they called Inter Miami if they're playing not only not in the state of Florida but also in the other side of the pond. But we shall see how that's going to work out, whether Inter Miami is going to finally get their approval of building that stadium that is long overdue in terms of building it in Freedom Park, because them playing at the site where it used to be Lockhart Stadium, it's getting kind of a little bit old, and that a lot of people are kind of making fun of Inter Miami in terms of playing that stadium. Then it would be like the whole joke about NYCFC still playing at a baseball stadium. Although Inter Miami fans will at least say that at least we're not playing in a baseball field, and at least this stadium was supposed to be soccer specific. MLS is also going to be starting their season in January, and this is kind of a reminder because I know a lot of people know that earlier in the season that MLS says that they are going to start their season in January, and preseason will start right after when MLS Cup will begin, which is 1 week. And the reason why they decided to start their season this early is because the World Cup is going to be happening in 2026. And I know for a fact that, the World Cup not only is going to be a big thing here in the US, but I'm pretty sure MLS is not going to compete with some of the World Cup games and festivities with some of the MLS Cup games. I mean, in some way I agree with that idea, but wouldn't that give like other foreign fans that see that, well, this league is going on, we might of course check out to see how it is, wouldn't that give like more foreign fans some attention instead of just stopping this whole league during the World Cup period? I don't know. I mean, they decided that is going to be the case, and hence that's why they decided to move it 1 month from when the season usually start in February. And I know there are a lot of teams, especially in the East Coast or even in the Midwest, are fuming the fact that their season is going to be starting in January because it's just too cold to start the season in January. And I won't be surprised there's going to be a ton of postponement in the first couple of weeks. The fact that the games are being postponed because there's just too much snow or just too cold to be played with. MLS also have reported to negotiate a long-term CBA agreement, which includes teams can have now 5 designated player spot, 10 international spot, and salary cap will be increased to $20 million. And I think this deal is actually going to get done by the end of the week, which is great. The fact that MLS have renewed their CBA this early, because last year when they had to renew their CBA, they literally came hours away from potentially the league having their first ever lockout season, and potentially the league will not be starting in February. But the good news is they were able to just reach a 1-year deal, 1-year extension in terms of the CBA agreement, and now it seemed like they are getting very close to reach this deal. It's great the fact that it is going to be the case, and we will have no threat of potentially this season, upcoming seasons, getting locked out, unlike in the previous season where we were really on the brinks of potentially getting locked out for the first time in MLS history. In addition to the new CBA agreement news, TAM and Discovery Right is no longer going to be a thing in MLS under the new CBA, which is kind of good news for some of these teams, and probably some fans saying that this Discovery Rights rule is just one of the dumbest rule in MLS, and I kind of have to agree with it because a lot of teams have been kind of fighting over this whole discovery rights and that they want to put like a discovery rights on this player so that they can get free cash out of it. And a lot of teams also have said that this is kind of unfair because, you know, this fighting for a rule that is just one of the dumbest rule in MLS, and that the fact that now it's no longer going to be a thing. At least now teams won't able to, of course, try to scout a player that they probably won't sign, but they're gonna try to get discovery rights out of that player so that they can get extra TAM or GAM money out of that. And speaking of TAM, that is no longer going to be a thing too. All the target allocation money that each team has heading into this season will now be transferred into the general allocation money that they have. MLS is also set to announce Las Vegas and Indianapolis as the 35th and 36th franchise in MLS. So MLS, of course, are trying to get to 40 franchise, as Don Gabbard said a couple of weeks ago that he wants to get to 40 franchise by 2027, and this is why he's already kind of announcing that Indianapolis and Vegas is going to be the 35th and 36th franchise. And by the way, I do feel so bad for San Diego fans and all those people that was hoping San Diego was going to come to MLS, because a lot of people thought that this was finally going to be the time that San Diego was going to come to MLS, and that even Don Gabbard himself says that San Diego eventually will become an MLS team, and it could be as soon as this season. Yeah, that apparently is not going to be true anymore, and that, yeah, San Diego, they basically just received the Sacramento Republic treatment. Although I think for Las Vegas, at the same time, they're happy that they're finally going to be in MLS, because they were also the predecessor in terms of receiving the Sacramento Republic treatment, which is a team that looked like they were going to be going to MLS a couple of years ago, and they had to be delayed so long until now to be into the league. And as for Indianapolis, I think in some way they kind of remind me a lot of Charlotte and Nashville, where, you know, this team, they just kind of came out of nowhere saying that they're going to be bidding for a MLS franchise in that area, and Lord and behold, after a couple of months, they're now being an MLS franchise. And that it would be interesting to see whether or not if they're going to still play at Lucas Oil Stadium, which is where they've been playing in USL for a lot of time. I'm pretty sure they won't, because Don Gabbard has already said that, you know, you cannot play at Lucas Oil Stadium as your main home ground, because that's not a soccer specific stadium. So they're although they also said that they're gonna build a stadium, we'll see whether or not if they are actually going to do, because there's no plan right now that Indianapolis is thinking about building a stadium that is not the current home that they're at, which is Lucas Oil Stadium. MLS will also expand their playoff format from 16 team to 24 team, with the top 4 teams getting a bye. And I guess maybe that's good news for some of these teams that is kind of like struggling to try to make it to the playoffs, and now they have a better chance to have a shot at it. But also that's going to anger a lot of fans, saying that the league has already had too many playoff teams, and now they're going to be adding 8 more teams into this fall, and that once again we're going to have more than half of the team in MLS to make it into the playoffs. Yeah, it just kind of doesn't feel very right, and that I'm pretty sure some of the top teams are going to be fuming the fact that more teams is going to be in the league, which means that they're going to have to play more games. Although the top 4 teams are going to get a bye, so basically what happened is that we're going to have like kind of a wild card weekend in the first week, and then all those teams that survive in the wildcard week will join those top 4 teams from each conferences, and those 8 teams are going to be joining those teams that won the wildcard round. There's also no news that there's going to be promotion and relegation in MLS, but there is news that there could be an 80-team Super League with 36 MLS team, 24 Liga MX team, and 16 Canadian Premier League team will join together in a single North American soccer league. And I also have not heard anything about whether or not if there's going to be promotion and relegation in this North American Super League. But either way, I mean, I've been hearing this news for the past couple of years, and this is just kind of one of those news that I'm just kind of getting tired of hearing. But then again, we don't know if this is, of course, going to happen. And I did say that the Lionel Messi kind of news for the past couple of years, I thought they keep saying that he's going to come to MLS, and it never come to fruition. And then a couple of years ago, he basically decided to say that, yes, I am going to be leaving Barcelona and joining Inter Miami for the future, which, speaking of Messi, I will talk a little bit later of his situation with Miami, because there's a lot of uncertain that he might actually not be staying with Miami for the near future. But yeah, you know, we shall see whether or not if that is going to be the case, and if it is going to be the case where we're going to have a North American Super League, how in the world are they going to figure out in terms of the schedule, the traveling, and just overall the playoff structure, if they're even going to have one. Now, finally, on this news of the week future edition, and in part number 1, the League Cup will now feature all 24 playoff team in MLS and 8 Liga MX team from Liga. And by the way, the League Cup is now going to be taking place in early February, because it replaced the CONCACAF Champions League, and a lot of Central American team, when the League Cup a couple of years ago replaced the CONCACAF Champions League, and also a lot of Canadian team were really pissed off at CONCACAF because of this. But recently they also kind of made a separate kind of different league called the CONCACAF Champions Cup, and that is when Canadian and Central American team is going to be facing each other. But a lot of these teams also feel like they want to be part of the League Cup, and it'll be interesting to see if those teams are going to be included. But as of now, it's going to be featuring all 24 playoff team in MLS and the top 8 Liga MX team from Liga. And, you know, I hope eventually they will expand the Liga MX team from Liga to potentially 10 or 12 teams, because right now I know there are other Liga MX team down there that is not happy the fact that even when they made it to Liga, they were not one of those teams that joined the League Cup, which is pretty much now the Champions League of the CONCACAF region. But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it for the news between December 3rd, 2025 to December 10th, 2025, Part 1 edition. Part 2 will be released tomorrow. And yeah, hope you guys enjoy this video, and I will see you guys next time.